I'm Robert Blaszkiewicz, Assistant Managing Editor with The Times, here with Doug Ross, Editorial Page Editor for The Times. We're discussing our endorsements for this midterm campaign. In this video, we'll be talking about endorsements in statewide races. Doug, let's start off with the governor of Illinois.
Right. That's a really interesting race. You've got Pat Quinn and as a Democrat and Bill Brady as a Republican. We endorsed Brady, and primarily the reason why is that Quinn has been going around giving a lot of money out, for various projects. To my mind, spending like a drunken sailor when the ship is sinking, and so Illinois has got to do something about that.
He's only served for part of a term, but he hasn't seemed to really grasp in terms of the fiscal needs of the state.
Right. I mean, when you've got a $13 billion deficit, you've got to act fast and decisively.
Okay. Jumping across the state line back into Indiana, let's talk about the Secretary of State's race, which is kind of interesting. It's got some scandal and intrigue of its own.
That is. There's Republican Charlie White, who's way ahead in the polls. Charlie is kind of tied up in a scandal in which you did not want to address that with us, but basically it involves voting with his ex-wife's address in the primary,
where he didn't live,
where he did not live. So
allegations of voter fraud, which are not good when you're running for Secretary of State, someone who oversees
the elections.
Exactly.
And Vop Osili. The two of them had a lot of the same ideas about helping businesses. Vop had, some ideas that went a little bit further, perhaps, than his Republican opponent. We would be remiss if we did not mention that Mike Wary is the Libertarian candidate for that. One of the things you'll see is there are a lot of Libertarians on the ballot this year in various races, and a good part of that is that this is a key year to determine ballot access for the Libertarians to make them be a standalone party rather than just simply a write-in. So that's an important thing.
So amid White's problems, we endorsed Osili.
Right.
Moving on to the state treasurer race, this is a matchup between incumbent Richard Murdoch, who's had some high-profile. His profile has been increased with certain stances he's taken. He's going against a newcomer, Democrat Pete Buttigieg.
Right, and we endorsed Buttigieg. What was interesting was that Buttigieg said nice things about his opponents' handling of the college savings, the 529, they're called, accounts, turned them over to You Promise. You probably have a You Promise credit card for, to help put your son through college.
Exactly.
When somebody says something nice about their opponent, that makes you stand up and take notice. Murdoch was the defining moment of his first term has been to challenge the Chrysler bankruptcy and bring the whole nation's focus on this issue of what's fair for the people who had invested in pension money into that company. Well, the problem is they probably would have gotten less coming out of the bankruptcy to start with than the negotiated settlement, and frankly there were a whole lot of jobs in Indiana at stake.
Exactly, and there's no question, maybe there's questions about the legal end of the bankruptcy and the deal that they had, but there's no question that if you had let Chrysler go under, it would have been devastating to the nation's economy. So some of that seems partisan driven on Murdoch's part, and that was a concern, I think.
Right.
We thought that Buttigieg had some really strong ideas and wasn't so much of that partisan.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the state senate, we're going to just hit these real quickly because we got a lot to run through. District 1, the incumbent Frank Mervan Jr. against David Sputic.
We endorse Mervan. He's done a world of good since he's been in there.
And in District 4, the incumbent Karen Talion against Republican Sean Olson. A little a tighter race.
Yeah, it's a tighter race. Italians, much more liberal, perhaps than we might otherwise want. But Olson was, extremely conservative. So, in the middle, Italian's done some good things. So we figured give it to her, right?
In District 6, Republican Sue Lansky is being challenged. She's a longtime incumbent.
Right.
She's being challenged by the Democrat Jim Metro and Libertarian Charles Barman.
Right. Chuck Barman's an interesting guy. Is got the huge white beard, makes you think Santa Claus, and he was talking a lot and frankly made a lot of sense when it comes to drainage issues. But Lansky stands out for again for some of the good things that she has done in there. Metro's a businessman, he comes at it with a businessman's perspective.
He's got the backing of the unions.
Right, he's got the backing of the unions, but Lansky has done a number of things to help South County as well as the entire region.
Yeah. Moving on to the House of Representatives, where we're seeing a real battle for control of the House.
Absolutely.
In District 1, the Democrat Linda Lawson against challenger Republican Bill Johnson.
Well, Johnson said he didn't want to meet with us. He was just too busy, so that made our decision pretty easy.
Yeah, we've been, Lawson has been solid in her role.
Oh, she's done a lot of good things.
Yeah, so we endorsed Lawson. District 2, the Democrat Earl Harris against the Republican Ken Stevenson.
Yeah, we endorsed Harris. One of the things that Harris did was help shepherd through the House Bill 1858 is what it was back then. But basically what it did was change the depreciation rates for the larger employers, the major heavy industry, the Whiting Refinery, for instance, and the steel makers. And since then, we've seen $3.8 billion invested into Whiting Refinery and hundreds of millions of dollars invested into the steel mills that might not otherwise have come. Yeah. So that was good.
Yeah. District 13, the Democrat incumbent, longtime incumbent Charlie Brown, being challenged by Libertarian John Schick.
Yeah. Charlie Brown, again, has been a tireless champion of public health in Indiana. He's promoting the smoking ban, but he's also trying to get a teaching hospital for Northwest Indiana, trying to get a trauma center. He's working on all these issues.
Yeah. Moving on to District 4, going into Porter County here, Republican incumbent Ed Soliday being challenged by a well-known Democrat, Thomas Weber Jr., former judge.
Right, and as you might expect from a former judge, Weber is very big on law enforcement issues and things like that. No surprise there. Soliday has a personality that might turn some people off. He's very sure of himself, but frankly, he has a right to be because he's done a lot of good. He's
in a short time. He's really emerged
right,
as a leader at Statehouse.
Yeah, he's been a real champion for the Ileana Expressway, for instance, and big regional projects.
Moving into District 10, the Portage area, the Democrat incumbent Chuck Mosley is facing a challenge from Republican Kenneth Kaminsky.
This is one where we endorse Mosley. I was impressed with what Mosley had done to try to help adult education funding.
It's a key issue for that district because Portage obviously has borne the brunt of the problems with the lack of funding for adult ed. So.
Right.
And then District 11, Democrat Dan Stevenson being challenged by Republican Cy Herder.
Yeah, Cy's not bad, frankly, but we endorse Stevenson, again the incumbent. Stevenson has been a strong proponent of the House Bill 1858 again comes up. He was a strong proponent of trying to encourage investment in Northwest Indiana. And also, he was one of the ones who filed a bill, it didn't succeed, but he carried the bill to try to eliminate townships a few years ago, which was interesting.
Okay. District 12, Democrat incumbent Mara Candelaria Reardon being challenged by Republican Pete Kerrigan.
That's one that is being watched pretty closely. Kerrigan's putting up a pretty fierce battle in that race. Reardon, one of the things we like about her, the reason we endorsed her, is that she saw what happened with the flooding in Munster and that area along the Little Calumet River, and has taken action to get that process well underway after decades of delay.
Right. And then moving on to District 13, where the longtime incumbent Chet Dovis, someone everyone knows, is going up against Republican Craig Meninga.
Right. Chet has, let's see, he's been in the only person who's been in the legislature as long as him and currently serving is House Speaker Pat Bauer.
Wow.
Exactly. and so they're well on track to setting a record for years of service in the legislature, both of them. Dobus has been a champion of regional projects again. He came and has been the leader of the Northwest Indiana delegation. Now he had a bit of controversy earlier this year when he had to dust up with Bauer and supported Northwest Indiana, and as a consequence Bauer took his leadership position away from him.
Okay. District 14, Democrat Vernon Smith facing Republican Catherine Campbell.
Vernon Smith is not as impressive as some of the others to me, but Catherine Campbell much less so.
Okay. And then in District 15, Republican Don Leahy, the incumbent, facing Democrat Tim Downs and a Libertarian Steve Helsel.
Right. Leahy has been Leahy's way down there. He's got a district that he has to drive an hour to get to the northern end of his district. I mean, seriously, it's that crazy the way it was drawn. But he has really done a lot for South Lake County in the process. And for somebody who lives all the way down by Brookston, he's paid a lot of attention to this area.
So we're endorsing the incumbent there as well. And then finally in District 19, probably one of the more interesting races in Northwest Indiana, where Democrat Shelley Vandenberg, the incumbent, is being challenged by former Crown Point Mayor, Republican Dan Klein, along with the Libertarian Jeff Dunsing.
Right, and this is one of the races that will determine the balance of power in the House. Shelley Vandenberg is feeling it. She's feeling a lot of pressure on her to win, and in fact, when I was talking with candidates in other races, the incumbents, the Democrats, are you knocking on doors? And they said, yes, we're going down into Shelley's district to support her. She's done some good things for the region, so we like her.
Yeah, our endorsements went mainly for incumbents here in the state races. I think we kind of talked about that it seemed like where we had stronger incumbents, we seem to have stronger challengers. It would have been nice maybe to distribute some of those challenges. If you could have taken the strong challengers and put them against the weaker incumbents, we might have endorsed more challengers than incumbents.
Right.
It just kind of worked out that way.
And we also have to point out before we forget that when we're talking a balance of power, that means who's going to be the next Speaker of the House, whether it's Brian Bosma, whether it's Pat Bauer. Brian, of course, being the Republican from Indianapolis area. And
who's going to oversee redistricting?
Exactly. And that'll determine the elections for the next 10 years.
It will. So that's our look at state races. We'll also be showing you videos looking at federal and local races. Thank you.
Thank you.